Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello, I'm Rory, and with me, as always, is Ken. How are you today, Ken?
Exceptionally well, Rory. This is the last podcast episode on Counselling Tutor for 2020, if you're listening in real time. So I guess recognising that we're at the end of an era, which was 2020. It's been a hell of a year indeed for many. And this episode, we have three topics that we'll be looking at. The first one with our student check-in, where we look at something that is applicable to students, but I think today a topic that is just as applicable to a qualified practitioner as well. We're looking at self-psychology, and we've got a great handout for that as well. So stick around for that. We then go into Digital Counselling Revolution, where we recognise that technology now plays a part in the way that counselling is delivered and consumed by our clients. And we're going to be speaking there about online presence, our digital presence online. And then we're going to be ending episode 174 and this year of our podcast by Practice Matters, when we look at something that presents within our practice rooms, what we're likely to see from clients. And we're going to be speaking about polyvagal theory and referring to a recent lecture we had in our CPD library from Emma Chapman. But starting us off with our student check-in, self-psychology. And I guess it kind of keys into the time of year we might be at the moment, Rory.
It keys into the zeitgeist or the spirit of the age, Ken, where if we look back on 2020, it's been an absolute hell of a year. And one of the things that comes up again and again and again is people being disconnected from loved ones, not being near people, having to be isolated. And you know, if there was a theory that really linked into this, a psychological theory, it would be self-psychology. And it was a theory developed out of Freud's school of thinking, the psychoanalytical school, by a psychotherapist called Heinz Kohut. And he talks about self-objects. And let me ask you a question, Ken. How many times through the years when we taught, did we meet students, or we may have met people in our personal lives, who've talked so warmly about the counsellors they've had, how magical they were, how much they've changed their lives?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's impacts that are made on people's lives. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said that you may forget what somebody says, but you won't forget how they made you feel.
Like Maya Angelou, whoa, fantastic. And this is very, very true. And one of the reasons that Heinz Kohut's theory of self-psychology is certainly taught at university, and it's certainly coming up in our Facebook page more and more. And certainly in the mailbag, I've had a number of emails, certainly this year, about self-psychology, is that it's an important factor in building the therapeutic relationship. And if you're wondering where our Facebook group is, if you just type Counselling Tutor into Facebook, you'll find us. We're a closed page. Knock on the door. Of course, we're going to let you in. And you'll find thousands and thousands of like-minded people all talking about the world of counselling, psychotherapy, supervision, everything to do with your studies or practice. So come on in, come and join us, come and say hello. And this topic comes up quite regularly, self-psychology. Now, we always think, don't we, that behaviorism and psychoanalysis and person-centered therapy are all very different therapies. But there is one thing that really keeps them all connected, and that is the fact of the human connection. And you know yourself, Ken, just how important it is to teach connecting and being you in the therapy room as much as it is the theory.
Yeah, I mean, we're speaking there about that congruence, being yourself within the therapy room. And if you look back to those early lessons in like the concepts of counselling, you start learning about rapport building. Carl Rogers speaks about psychological contact. It's that contact, it's that special bond that is formed within the therapy room. And it's very, very special. And I guess it's something that the client can kind of latch onto and hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And this is the key thing. All the theories talk about the quality of the therapeutic relationship, and really Heinz Kohut was the kind of catalyst for really understanding how being with somebody else can help regulate you. So if there's anything about his theory that we need to understand, it's that just being with someone can regulate them. And I have a quite an amusing story. I taught someone who was a psychologist many years ago, absolutely fantastic person, really brilliant in terms of being a therapist and also understanding how to apply the theory. And she talked about many years ago when she was training, she saw somebody sitting in a room, a man sitting in the room with a young boy. It was in a school. The boy was reading a comic, and the man was reading a paper. And people would say, well, what kind of work's being done here? And what work was being done was the child, it was normalizing something for a child who was living in a very chaotic environment. They were doing something very, very normal. The child was reading the comic. The older man was reading the paper. And what was really happening here was the child was being regulated by the older man. It was a case of taking a part of that other person, the other, interjecting it into yourself and using it to stabilize. And this is something that happens in all therapies, absolutely all therapies. If you look at TA, for instance, Richard Erskine's theory of the integrative self, reintegrating the parts of the lost self, rely completely on being with somebody who is non-judgmental, who is empathic, who is stable in the therapy room. I still think we can get past the fact that you need to have someone stable and someone who is consistent as a therapist. And this really does regulate it. And what Kohut was saying was a big part of therapy is, yes, of course, it's the intervention. Of course, it's the communication. But a big part is taking away and absorbing that kind of calm, regulated side of your therapist.
Yeah, and I think as you're speaking about this, I'm thinking about Bowlby and the idea about internalization of positive interactions with significant others. And it's the same kind of things, that significant other, if you've been let down within your life and you haven't had that stable other person there in the early stages of development, it's being the therapist, just being healthy and kind of showing that... being a significant other, really, in that relationship sometimes is just enough. And I think Kohut termed this kind of development, I think it's transmuting internalization is the phrase that was coined, Rory.
Yeah, in our house, we speak of little else.
Yeah, there's a lot of words in counselling and psychotherapy to learn. Luckily, I'm reading it off the handout that you've made for today, Rory, so I've got my cheat sheet on hand.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that self-psychology relies on is surprisingly transference, and the transference coming from the therapist or the practitioner to the client, and that's broken down into three areas: mirroring, that serves as a mirror and it reflects back a sense of self-worth, and just as you'd use a mirror to check appearance, mirroring transference is the use of affirming and positive responses from the other, then you build those traits within yourself. And also, Kohut believed individuals believed that we need others to make us calm and comfortable. And it's interesting, isn't it, in this time of COVID where people are really isolated, that people are getting very, very nervous, they're getting very isolated, they're getting very uncomfortable. And of course, one of the things we know about human interaction is we need to be with each other to have that kind of comfort and calm. And as you're absolutely right, Ken, it goes right back to Bowlby, where children run to the parents to get that reassurance. And classically, and again, this comes up in counselling a lot, certainly if you teach, what was called twinship and alter ego. And Cohort suggested that people need to feel a sense of likeness to others. And I always wonder, when people come to train as counsellors, and you may want to reflect on this in your own time, really, for those who are listening, I wonder how much of that is a need to be like one's therapist, Ken. How often did we used to get people coming in and saying, "Oh, I've had therapy and I really want to be a therapist." And I often wonder how much of that is absorbing that part of the therapist and then wanting to be like themselves.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful having that significant other, somebody there that reflects that. I think it's rarely seen in open life, because we kind of go about, maybe within a family setting if it's a healthy family environment, but it's like every man or woman or person for themselves out there at the moment. It seems to be a very isolated, insulated kind of world we live in. So it is very rare, very special, and leaves a significant impact. And as you said, Rory, so many of the students coming in, and including my story, why did I go into counselling? Because when I was at a part of darkness in my life, somebody dared hold a hand out into that darkness to help me out. And that was so significant within myself that I wanted to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's no surprise that the work of Cohort is taught quite a lot, in counselling training. And, as we begin to understand with the major research that's evolving, that, it is the quality of the therapeutic relationship, which is a really large factor in good outcomes for clients. I've said this before, the actual theoretical component is about 15% of a positive outcome. It's the relationship which forms quite a considerable amount of the positive outcomes that clients take. It's hardly surprising that that this theory is taught. And I said at the beginning of this piece that it spans across all the therapeutic disciplines building the relationship. We naturally assume person-centered therapy because the whole of the theory is built on that. But if you think of the relational turn in transactional analysis, where they've embraced a more relational model, that speaks definitely to Cohort. Third wave CBT, which includes a lot of kind of person-centered approach, speaks to the work of Cohorts. Indeed, you look at any and every therapy, they all acknowledge that the relationship is a prime part of it, and we have to thank Cohort for that, and giving us the sense that we need others to regulate us. It's just a fact of life, and a fact that's kind of proved itself during these difficult COVID times.
Yeah, taking that circle right back to the beginning of a time where we might be isolated and not able to connect with our loved ones. It's an important theory. I think it's something that is certainly interesting. There's more on the handout as well. So if you want to hear about how narcissism actually forms part of this theory, then you really want to be going and getting the handout for this. And you can get it. It's free. It's on self-psychology theory by Heinz Cohort. And you can get that by going to our website, which is counsellingtutor.com. Top menu bar, just click on our podcast tab. That's going to take you to all of our back catalogue of podcasts. Today's episode is 174. Just find that number, click on that page. You're going to have the page show notes, which is kind of a précis of what Rory and I have spoken about today. You'll find some additional links in there to external content where appropriate, but you'll also find the self-psychology theory download there. It's free of charge. You just pop in your email address and we will send that to you. And of course, this theory has been taken from our counselling study resource. Our counselling study resource is a bank of resources, lectures, and study guidance and support for students of counselling and psychotherapy. And if you're interested in finding out more about our counselling study resource library and you are a student studying, then go to counsellingtutor.com. Lots of information about it there. So moving away from our student check-in, dipping our toe in that is Digital Counselling Revolution, where today we're going to be speaking about online presence.
Digital Counselling Revolution.
Yes, well, with Christmas coming, or the holiday season, perhaps for people who don't celebrate Christmas, I always think that it's probably the time of year where more photographs are taken than any time before. I've got a background in photography, and when I was a younger man, I used to work in a photo shop, and Christmas was one of the biggest times for people bringing in their developing and printing their pictures from Christmas parties. Now, of course, that's a thing of the past, and people upload them onto social media platforms, which kind of links me neatly in to thinking about our online presence. And online presence is about how we portray ourselves professionally to the outside world. And I think this is really important if you're an online counsellor, and I think if you're an online practitioner in general, because we know that people will use search engines, or the term is Google, of course. Other search engines are available to find out about us. And we are in a professional business, we're professional people. And in my view is, and I'm sure this is shared by a lot of people, it may be not shared by others, is that we should present ourselves in a professional way. Because after all, clients are coming to us and they want to be confident that the people they're working with are professional people. When I started training in 2002, the internet was hardly a thing. In fact, a lot of my peers asked me, what is this internet? What does it do? And it was very, very hard to find out about anybody. Nowadays, you can even find out what socks people wear. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of stuff you can find out about someone. And I think it's really good to audit your online presence. Do yourself a Google search and see what comes up with your name or your address, because you'd be really surprised how much information's out there. And I think that it's really important to have a professional presence to give confidence. And the reason I mentioned Christmas is, of course, sometimes people do indiscreet things at holiday times, and the pictures are posted on people's social media pages, and sometimes it's just not a good look.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. It's one that cycles round again and again. And looking at the digital counselling revolution, having our presence online, I think it's a worthy topic to be delving into. And specifically this time of year, as you've quite rightly said, Rory, people tend to reach out more, maybe post more on Facebook or use social media platforms to connect with loved ones, friends, send messages around. And it's about what we put within those on those platforms, because it's there forever. When you put something out online, it doesn't go away. And Rory, you were speaking about Googling yourself. It's really interesting. If you go ahead and go into Google or whichever search engine you choose to use and put in your name, you might look at the page results and go, oh, there's nothing there about me. But try switching it to images. So on any search, when you've done a search on Google, I'm speaking about now, go to the top and you can actually click show me the images. And very often you might see profile pictures of you taken maybe from a LinkedIn account or from your Facebook account or from your website that's been pulled in or from an agency you work in that's tagged with your name. And you might see that your pictures come out there. And by going and clicking on, you can actually go to where that picture was posted. Now, when we look at something like Facebook, we can be led to believe, and I'm just using Facebook as an example, so any social media platform really, we can be led to believe that when we're on Facebook, we're only speaking to a very limited group of people, maybe people that are our friends. Maybe we're in a group like the Counselling Tutor group. If you're not in that, get in it. Get onto Facebook, put in Counselling Tutor, come and join us. Tens of thousands of like-minded people hang out there. But when you're posting in there, you may think, oh, I'm just posting only in this group. Nobody else can see that. But anything you're putting online can be seen by others. It can be, and it's there for a long time. So you might be having a rant on your own Facebook page about bad service you may have had, or anything about politics, or anything that you feel strongly about. Be wary that may be picked up and seen by somebody else, maybe somebody who you deal with professionally, maybe an employer at some stage. If you're going for a job interview, it's common practice these days. common practice for an employer to Google you and do a bit of a rummage around to find out if there are any skeletons in the closet, or to see how you present yourself online. And I think as professionals, as counselors dealing with mental health, dealing with people who trust us, we need to be very cautious of what we put out, because once out, it's very difficult to pull it back.
Yeah, and I came across an interesting term that I never heard before recently called Twitter archaeologists. And those are people who go around plowing through people's back tweets to try and find something that may incriminate them. And I think the thing with with social media is that sometimes people go through very difficult times. They may put something on, send it out, tweet it, put it as a Facebook status, and then they forget about it. But as Ken actually said, it stays with you forever. So, I think doing some kind of audit at some point and going through, and it's even linked into people adding you into groups. I noticed that I was tagged into someone's group, a family gathering a couple of years ago. And I hadn't consented to it. They just put my name in, and I contacted them and said, could you just take it out? Because, no one wants to see me having my curry, really. I mean, I don't do anything, that's exciting. But no one wants, I didn't want people to see aspects of my private life. So you need to be really, really careful. And when you come to think about setting up your profile, for the world, for the clients to see, there are some, I think, really important kind of factors you need to think about. One of them is get an up-to-date picture. I think a lot of people use pictures they might have had taken years ago, and it can be a bit of a shock for somebody if they see you now and you posted a picture 10 or 15 years ago. It's not really what's on the can, is it? You want to produce yourself as you are. And in fact, myself and Ken grew a beard, not the same beard, I hasten to add. We've got our own. We've got our own beards. We don't share a beard. That'd be too weird, wouldn't it? And we changed our pictures because it reflected who we are. And I think that's really, really important. And get a decent picture, and really think about putting a professional gloss on, because it can be very, very difficult. And also, as I've said time and time again, it can link into transference. If you're doing something, or presenting yourself in a way that isn't professional, clients may look into that. I can think of seeing someone's Facebook post many years ago, and they were kind of stripped to the waist. It was a man, and I thought, I'm not quite sure if I'd be too comfortable with clients seeing that. It's not up to me to police, people's pictures, but what does that say to a client? What about a vulnerable client? So I think we do have to self-censor a little bit, and that probably isn't a very popular thing to say. But clients need to meet us where we are. We meet clients where they are. They should be able to see us for the first time in the therapy room, not come in with a whole pile of preconceptions before we meet. I think that could be really detrimental to building a relationship.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I mean, there's two sides to this. There's the professional side of being online. So that might be your website and what you put on your website and how you present yourself. And maybe you would reflect that within something like LinkedIn, which is more of a business tool, although it does have a social aspect to it. But its primary usage is generally business rather than to hang out and have a chat. You might have a certain way of presenting yourself. And then how does that translate into the more social elements like Facebook? Does it kind of reflect the same kind of person, or is it a Jekyll and Hyde? Are we seeing a completely different person on the social media? What might that mean if a client does choose to kind of look you up on Google? What are they going to find there? And I guess if I was to give any guidance on this, so this is coming from our course. So we have a course called Online and Telephone Counselling, where this is one of the elements we speak about. And one of the tips in there is go and have a look at your Facebook profile and make sure that it is secure. And if you're not sure how to do that, go onto YouTube and put in make Facebook secure or lock Facebook or something like that, and you're going to get little videos that'll show you how to do that. Because by default, at the time of making this recording, a Facebook account, everything that you post on your timeline can be seen by others. Your friends can be seen by others, so they can see who you're connected with. And you can turn that off. It's just a little switch where you say, I do not want to share this. I will only show what's on my timeline if somebody is friended and I've accepted them as a friend. Nobody can see my pictures unless they are my friend. But by default, everything is open. So even if somebody is not your friend, if they find it to your Facebook page, they can see more or less what you've been posting and who your friends are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It pays to be very, very thoughtful in a world where our privacy, it kind of slips away. As I said when I started practicing, no one ever even thought about this because it just didn't exist. And now we live in a world where a lot more of our information, self-published, I have to say, in a lot of cases, is available. So be thoughtful of what you publish, and also you may have had some redundant accounts you've used in the past. A lot of people start up a social media account and then leave it, and then they start another one up and forget they've got the one they have. So if you've got a bit of time, just go through your social media account. As Ken says, lock down your profile so people can't see your friends or pictures, and you can have a healthy social media life, sharing your pictures with your friends, but you're not showing them to the world. And I think that's probably a good axiom to live a professional life by.
Indeed, it just shows so much to consider when we're talking about the digital counselling revolution. And if you're interested in the course that we run on online and telephone counselling, more information can be found at counsellingtutor.com. So we move away from digital counselling revolution into something I've been looking forward to today, Rory, because we're going into practice matters. We're speaking about a topic that I don't have much experience in. So I'm looking forward to discussing this. We're talking about polyvagal theory. So make sure you stick around for Practice Matters.
Practice Matters.
In recent years, they've made so many progresses in how we react to the world. We're quite familiar with things like post-traumatic stress disorder, disassociation. We understand, how the process of someone being traumatized works and how we can help them. But now there's even more and more research into not just how it affects our mood and our brain function, but how it affects our body. And, the work of Stephen Porges, an American psychologist, talks about the polyvagal system. And this basically is our nervous system. And I'm interested, you said at the beginning, Ken, that you've got absolutely no idea about it, but I bet you've experienced it. I bet you've experienced pains or aches or stress-related things where your body has reacted as well as your thoughts and your feelings.
Definitely. And I mean, just speaking about something like anxiety, for me, anxiety is both emotional and physical. I feel it. I would say things like my stomach is in a knot. I feel heaviness on my chest. I feel weighed down on my shoulders. There are definitely physical attributes to the emotions that I feel. And when I'm feeling joyous, I might feel light and happy. I'd feel happy emotionally, but I might feel a lot lighter within my body. It's interesting how they are very, very real physical attributes that go along with how I'm feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right, Ken. And as we talk more and more about trauma, we talk about trauma-informed practice and how we can work with clients who are traumatized, and we have to work with them in a holistic way. One of the things I learned when I did a trauma-informed practice course was that you needed to pay attention to how the client felt physically as well as emotionally and mentally, because what was happening is that almost certainly any form of trauma transposes itself into the body. And I think a great example of that, and something that anybody who's worked in bereavement may have seen, is when somebody dies, the relative, a close relative, may very well have the same symptoms in the same body area. Many years ago, I was sat in class teaching some students, and they were saying my client's complaining of really bad headaches. It was a bereavement. She's working with bereavement, and she said really, really cripplingly bad headaches. And I said, did the person who died die of a brain tumor by any chance? And she went, how did you know that? And I said, it's just so not unusual for people to mirror the illnesses of someone who has recently died. You know, it's a form of transference, but also it's a form of trauma. You know, it's a mirroring of that. And I think we've got to be very, very thoughtful of it. And also, you know, Ken, when clients come into the therapy room and they talk about, you know, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling a bit anxious, but I also talk about the system of their body. You know, my stomach's churning. You know, I've got aches. I'm having shortness of breath. All of this is linked to trauma, and I think that as part of trauma-informed practice, you know, we talk about psychological education. You know, I'm sure, like myself, Ken, you've had to speak to clients and teach them almost about why they react in a certain way.
Definitely. And I guess normalizing is something really important here. It can be that the client feeling that way thinks that this is just them, that they're the only person ever to feel like this. I shouldn't be feeling like this. But it's true that there is a physiological representation of what they're having. It's really interesting you speaking about kind of mirroring what a loved one may be struggling with or has died from. That is really interesting as well. And as we went into this, I recognize in myself that this is an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. And that was why I was so interested in diving into this, Rory. But what it's showing me again and again and again is that importance of continuing professional development. My interest is piqued. I've seen a lot of information out and about on polyvagal theory. So I know that it is kind of something of this moment. And I look forward to diving in deeply to Emma Chapman's lecture, which is in our counsellor CPD library, to learn more about this.
Absolutely. Emma's delivered a fantastic lecture on the polyvagal system. And I think just having an overview, there are loads of good books out. Wessel van der Kolk, I think I pronounced his name correctly, produced a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And, you know, we're seeing more and more clients with physical illnesses that are connected with abuse. Back pain, stomach pain, chest pain, all of which when they visit a medic, they go to a doctor, the doctor says, well, we can give you something for it, but I'm not quite sure, you know, what it is. It doesn't seem to be an underlying cause here. And actually, it's a trauma cause. The trauma is stored in the body as almost like a memory, and it stores in the muscles. It stores in the facial muscles. It can store, in the ear, the heart. The heart can be affected. The head. And the reason for this is we have a number of cranial nerves that link from the brain to different parts of the body, and trauma is transmitted through those into those different parts of the body. It is really, really so important. And I think you're right, Ken. It's a growing area of CPD. It's a growing area of study. It's a developing idea. And I think it's one that every therapist really needs to understand. If you're dealing with clients, you really need to know about polyvagal theory, because it will present in your room time and time again.
Indeed, if you're interested in watching Emma Chapman's lecture, if you were a member of our counsellor CPD library, you can log in. That lecture has been added. If you're not a member of our counsellor CPD library, go to counsellingtutor.com. All the information is there. For less than £15, you can access that lecture on polyvagal theory, but also over 150 hours of other lectures, all designed to sharpen our competence as practitioners. So that's counsellingtutor.com if you're interested in our professional or private practitioner, or not really private practitioner. What would it be, Rory? It's qualified practitioner. I don't know where. Private professional. There you go. Qualified practitioner. CPD Library, counsellingtutor.com. So there we go. I guess I just want to wish, as we come to the end, because normally we would do a recap of what we've maybe discussed today, and that would be us out of here. But I just want to pop in and just say, thank you so much for your attention to the Counselling Tutor Podcast for the year of 2020. With it being our last episode, I just want to wish you, your loved ones, well over the holiday period. And I certainly look forward to speaking to you in 2021.
Yes, and I'd like to thank everybody who's converted to online therapy, who's worked so hard through this just such a horrible, I think the Queen called it annus horribilis year, a really horrible year in this dreadful virus, and the counselling community have raised themselves, raised the bar, have retrained, have gone 150% to still support their clients who need support more than others. So, a big thank you from me. And as always, stay grounded, stay safe, and enjoy the break.
If you're a qualified counsellor or psychotherapist, then why not check out the Counsellor CPD Library? Stay current with your CPD requirements with over 150 hours of academically rigorous, on-demand lectures you can stream to your device. Joining Counsellor CPD will expand your skill set to create a more specialised, highly rewarding practice. For more information on the Counsellor CPD Library, visit counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.